Sit back, relax. Try to maintain your composure. You are about to become connected.
Welcome everybody to the Connect Podcast episode 13, and today is very special. I'm very excited because we have Shatha here with us, who is the legal counsel from Animals Australia, the organisation which is basically at the forefront of anything animal rights.
In Australia?
In Australia.
Yeah.
And, you know, we are around the world as well because we try to make the world a better place as well for animals, not just Australia, right? Is that right? Correct.
That's right.
So, and this is one of the most important issues, I believe, that needs to be addressed because the animals don't have a voice, and because it's just, I think, quite a representation of really what's wrong with the world if our animals aren't being treated right. That's a pretty core, fundamental problem with our psyche. So we're very proud to have Shatha here today to talk about anything animals and to tell us what to do to help. The big issues,
yeah.
And to yes.
I was just reading your website before, and it's good because we've all got our little mottos here at the Connect. Tess has got one, I've got one. But Animal Australia's motto was something along the lines of, if we can look after animals properly, then a lot of other problems in society may be fixed along the same lines.
Oh, is that your actual motto?
Well, no, it's not. No.
I think you just made that
up. I'm paraphrasing quite extensively.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
but
it's a kinder world, basically.
it's a kind of world.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, so,
Yes.
yeah, that was a paraphrase,
Yes.
wasn't it? Definitely.
Yes.
But I thoroughly believe some people who meditate a lot, they go, well, if everyone meditated, then the world would be a better place. If everyone did this, the world would be a better place. And but I signed up to that. I was like, well, yeah, if everyone purchased, went to their supermarket and purchased the free-range chicken, I did all this, and the world would become a better place.
Yeah, I think it comes back to that philosophy that animals, just by virtue of their position in society and the world, are very vulnerable. They're voiceless. They don't have any rights.
That's
and
right.
So, if you take on the view that you don't want to bring any harm to any kind of being that has the capacity to suffer, then that would extend itself to all facets of your life.
Yes.
And if everybody in the world lived the kind of life where they didn't bring harm to any other being and still lived a healthy and happy life, then you can imagine the sort of world that this would be.
That's exactly
Certainly.
right.
Yeah.
And I think it goes the other way around too, that when you see someone who is cruel to animals, I think that shows a lot about their character.
Absolutely.
I think if you can't be cruel to animals if you're a good person, that's just not possible. You can't do both.
Well, no,
There's no
absolutely
way.
not. Because
I think when you see animal lovers, I think that says a lot about their nature too.
Yeah.
Certainly. So, I mean, well, let's get down to the
Let's get down to
the
things,
nitty gritty. We've seen let's say a couple of major campaigns lately. I think everyone would have seen what was happening with the live export situation.
That Pakistan sheep thing, that made me absolutely furious.
So it gets very angry, as you should.
Yeah,
Tell us about
that's the normal reaction.
Yeah.
Well, the whole live export trade, as you know, and as most people know, because it's one of the biggest issues facing this country and the world, because it's painting Australia in a very sort of questionable sort of view to the rest of the world. It's a very controversial industry because it's actually not possible the way that it occurs, it's actually not possible to have a live export trade without bringing that sort of suffering and that sort of harm. It is absolutely impossible, and we've tried to regulate what happens to animals in the trade, what happens in overseas jurisdictions that we really have no control over. No amount of memorandums of understanding, no amount of regulatory frameworks that we produce here is going to protect those animals once they leave our shores. And that's the reality of it.
So do we look at, if you I've sort of got my own opinion on it. Is it a cultural thing, like when these animals come off? Is it, because they're sort of living in second, third world conditions, they're these people are more likely to go, well, they're just meat, they're just, nothing. Like once you do start reaching first world conditions, do people then start developing a sense that they can look after these animals better rather than treating them badly? What happens? What's the idea?
Well, I wouldn't sort of tar a whole country based on the way slaughterhouses and people in the trade would treat animals. Certainly. I mean, there's plenty of people. I mean, nobody would essentially tolerate animal cruelty. No one would look at an animal suffering in that sort of capacity and think that was okay.
Sure, yeah.
But I just think that it's just a thing that they do just, some of them do just see them as a means to an end, being the meat at the end on the table, and so they're not treated with the same humane treatment that one would expect.
So again, when you're under desperate situations, when all you need is just, bread and butter, and you're a developing country just trying to make it in an industrialised world, that's your main focus is just trying to make a profit. So your animals are just not going to come first.
Efficiency in the profit making.
Yeah, when you're in a situation where you're quite comfortable, then you start having the ability to care about the environment and animal welfare and stuff. So I think that is definitely a progressive. That's a pretty common trend, I think, with affluence.
It's also a custom thing. I mean, in these overseas markets with the live trade, they want the animals alive because, one of the reasons is because of halal slaughter. For people that are listening that don't understand what halal slaughter is, it's basically killing an animal without first pre-stunning it, which means that you basically bleed the animal out by slashing its throat.
Does it have to face it?
It faces it towards Mecca, a prayer or something to that effect is said, and the animal is essentially sacrificed. That's the thing. But when you're dealing with large animals, particularly large cattle, or any sheep, any animal that can smell fear and see animals around it being bludgeoned to death, is going to be difficult to restrain and humanely, whatever that means, to kill it in that sort of circumstance. So it's just fundamentally not a workable model. It's just there's nothing that can be done to guarantee animal welfare in that particular situation.
Well, I saw what they were trying to do as halal killing on the sheep in Pakistan, and there is no fucking way that is in any way.
I can see you do get angry about these things.
She does, yeah. She definitely does. But I think it's hard. I mean, we always direct people towards documentaries like Earthlings or Food Incorporated or something like, and it's hard to sit through and watch that, even for a male like that, thinks he's tough and thinks, I might not be crying like Tess would be, but I'm certainly
angry,
very annoyed.
Sure.
And
I think it's important. I mean, it's important to react. It's important to sort of feel that way, because that means that you've got a very strong conviction about it. But it's also really important to channel that. So getting angry is one thing, but I think people need to sort of realise that the power of one is a very powerful thing. So phone calls to your local minister, emails, letters to the editor, all that sort of stuff. It might sound on its face that one person can't make a difference, but we've seen from the live export trade, it took one cutting edge expose on four corners, and the entire country.
That was amazing, and not just that, purchase power as well, especially with animal products. That is one thing where we really can make a difference. We buy free range, or if you're going to buy eggs and chicken, that's the thing we can do and shift. And like what you guys have done, which is amazing with Coles and just Coles. You've influenced them to sell only free range eggs, is that right?
To shy away. Just before we move on from the live export trade, I just want to clarify something, because there is I guess a misnomer out there in the community and in the trade that the halal market has to thrive on the way that they're doing it at the moment, being that the animals have to go live and that they do have to kill them a certain way. But there is chilled meat that leaves Australia that is halal accredited, where the animals are stunned. So there are ways to do that. Absolutely. Okay. So live animals are not actually needed for halal slaughter.
Certainly, and that should be the viable option out. Really, is that so? I mean, in the context of sending them over live to saying that we're not going to do that anymore, there might be a teething period, but is it essentially in the long run going to seriously hurt the industry?
I don't believe it does, and there's a lot of economics around it. There's a lot of studies that have been produced to Parliament and that are in Hansard that support the fact that we do not have to send live animals over in that manner to support the halal market. We're doing it at the moment. We are sending chilled meat that has been halal slaughtered here. They are serving the purpose and they are meeting that demand, so there's no reason to continue.
I'm just thinking the transport costs and everything. Surely it's easy just to do it here.
It's not just the cruelty that might happen when they get there. It's the trip over there that's just
the
voyage in itself. And what other people don't realise as well is we are very focused on what happens because it's just so awful and needs to be addressed now immediately. But a lot of people are now sort of maybe not sort of considering also what happens with the voyage and the deaths that occur. And what a lot of people don't realise as well is that under Australian law, and we'll get to this later when we start talking about why factory farming is allowed to occur in this country.
Sure.
For people that don't sort of get it and sort of are confused by it. But with the live export trade is essentially controlled by the Commonwealth government. It's not a state-based protection, which is how all other animal welfare is pretty much governed. It's a Commonwealth jurisdiction, and the Commonwealth pretty much lays out the rules behind, getting a permit and a license to export, etc., etc. Under our Commonwealth law, it actually says that if you have a voyage that goes over and less than 2%, and keeping in mind that some of these voyages contain over 100,000 heads of fish.
What's that? 10%?
If less than 2% of your voyage dies, that's actually not a reportable incident. Sure, you have typically an on-board veterinarian that
2,000.
Yeah, so you've got an on-board vet, obviously, that tends to the animals. The ratios are also in themselves a worry, where typically you have maybe one vet that is responsible for all of the animals on board. And so deaths and autopsies are occurring on board. But basically, the point is this: if less than 2% of your voyage dies, you're okay.
Yeah, you're okay.
You're okay. So that's the law.
That's only 2,000,
Yeah.
Come on. Who cares? No, it's so ridiculous.
But a lot of those
talking about
deaths,
massive numbers,
All of those deaths, would they be sort of one virus that might spread to a whole of them?
The animals suffer a variety of things. Inanition, shy feeding. I mean, you've taken an animal from a farm that's been grazing out into an environment where they're loaded onto these dark, crammed ships. Any animal is going to be uncomfortable, scared, not going to eat, and they're essentially standing in their filth for days and days and days in the dark.
For weeks,
all manner of diseases occur. Yeah,
certainly.
Yeah,
so we went to a bit about Middle East scenarios. Indonesia, is there just as many problems there as if there are, because it's closer? Is it a bit more sane to send them there, or we're just talking?
No, the problem is that once they leave our shores, we really have no control. It's up to us to control that. But the way that the framework is laid out, it really the industry is very self-regulated. So it actually, we have to rely on the good faith of the export company to do the right thing. And we've seen time and time again that it's not happening.
Absolutely.
And they do really thumb their noses at the law. We just saw in recent weeks there's been another complaint to government about what's going on in Kuwait, where animals have been seen to be leaked out of these approved slaughterhouses into these back end markets where they're still being sold on the basically. Let me just sort of take it back a step.
Sure.
So after Indonesia. Prior to Indonesia, there was nothing really regulating what happens to the animals over the shores. Okay, so they rolled out something called a Export Supply Chain Approval System. It's called SCAS for short.
Right.
SCAS has put new obligations on the exporter to say, all right, when you apply for your license or your permit to export animals, you have to show the government certain documents, and those documents have to be things like how do you ensure that your animals are only going through certain facilities that are now accredited to humanely, again, whatever that means, slaughter animals through this approved. It's an approved supply chain, so it's almost like a factory line that starts here at our farm gate and ends at the kill floor. Okay, so only approved facilities now can channel animals through that chain, and they've been accredited in different parts of the world, including Indonesia and Kuwait, and
by Australian authorities or by the countries themselves.
Well, auditors are being sent over from Australia, but they could be sent from other parts of the country. But essentially, we send them under our mandate to say go and approve, these facilities or see if they are acceptable. But what's going on is that animals are still being leaked out of these processes and are being found located in these, markets. Is
that because there's just sort of other markets like black market type things going on where...
Well, it just shows you that the system's not working.
Well,
the system's not working for whatever reason.
Doesn't matter what.
Doesn't matter what the reason is, but it's not working. They're still being located in these, these markets. They're still being slaughtered under unacceptable conditions.
Absolutely. We got heaps to get through, and we need to move on to something else. But just in relation, in relation to major live exporting countries around the world, I suppose Australia's a unique one because we're an island down wherever. But we do export quite a lot of live animals compared to a lot of other countries around the world because of our size, because of the countries around us. We're up there, aren't we? Like to give our listeners a magnitude of the problem, we are actually.
Well, in 2012, we exported over 2.4 million animals in the live export trade.
There we go. Point in case.
2.4 million.
So that's cattle, sheep.
Mostly
those two.
The big ones that know what's going on.
Right. And it's such a hard thing to change too, because as we saw with the Pakistan sheep thing, when we stopped it, all our farmers here suffered and all the cattle here suffered because they had nowhere to go. The feed was running out on their farms. They weren't being fed. That was an issue, wasn't it?
No. I don't think. I think it was more to the point
Or
where
just skipping movie?
where farmers
Okay.
farmers